So, Michael, it's finally happened. The summer movies have been delayed indefinitely.
Yay!
Tenet. Yeah, I know, right? Tenet. The new Christopher Nolan movie. Who knows when that's coming out? And the same with Mulan. Who knows when that's coming out either? It is all a mystery. Yes, we have the answer that these movies are going to be out. Well, who knows when? It's suspended indefinitely, as they say. Bill and Ted, though. Bill and Ted will be released on the 1st of September, I believe, on demand. So, for big movies like Mulan and Tenet, they're waiting for a cinematic release. But for Bill and Ted, it's going to be released on video. So there you go. Just a nice update there for you.
Well, I'll tell you what, Luke, it feels like these films are a real unobtainium.
Was that a reference to Avatar, Michael?
Yes. Because, obviously Avatar, we've been waiting for that for years. Decades.
Yes. We have the sequel to Avatar 2009 movie. And sadly, Michael, we're going to have to wait even longer because all the Avatars have been pushed back. Avatar 2 is now moved to 2022. Avatar 3 has moved to 2024. Avatar 4 has moved to 2025. And Avatar 5 has moved from 2027 to 2028. So it's curious why there's a 3-year gap between Avatar 4 and 5, and for the rest it's 2. But yeah, just
he hasn't had enough time to
longer.
work on Avatar 5. That's the issue.
Yeah, I know.
It would be so funny if the second one is just shit, but after all this waiting, it would just be mental.
It's penciled in the 5th Avatar for December 22nd, 2028.
Yeah. I guess the good news is that the coronavirus thing didn't delay the most anticipated film, which was The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
Imagine if we had to wait for that.
Oh my god, thank God we got that in. Thank the fucking Lord. Oh dear. But that's it basically. We're going to have to wait even longer for some of these great movies. But very sad. But at least the NBA is back, Michael, so we can be thankful about that, can't we?
Yeah. I mean, that's great. I love it. Good old, just guys running around, throwing their balls. So much better than, I don't know, whatever else. What? Mulan? No, more like Hulan. And that's it.
Okay. Great.
We ended strong. Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast. We look at films that have come out in the near and distant past, we give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are celebrating the 25-year anniversary of leaving Las Vegas. Just like last week we were celebrating the 25-year anniversary of a similar film, Showgirls, which was also set in Vegas and about certain kinds of vice. But this time we're looking at leaving Las Vegas. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about leaving Las Vegas?
Sure thing, Michael. So, as you said, it's 25 years since this movie was released, Leaving Las Vegas. It's a 1995 American romantic drama film written and directed by Mike Figgis and based on the semi-autobiographical 1990 novel of the same name by John O'Brien. Did you know what happened to John O'Brien, by the way, after he realised his book was going to be made into a movie?
He drank loads of alcohol and died.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, I don't know about the alcohol bit, but probably. He died by suicide after signing away the film rights to the novel.
That seems kind of appropriate thematically.
Yeah,
considering
exactly.
The general feel of this film.
Yes, there is only depression, it seems, with this movie in terms of how it was made and the actual content. Anyway, it stars Nicolas Cage, Elizabeth Shue, and Julian Sands. It was released on October 27th, 1995, so we're just a few months away from the 25-year anniversary, or the official one. And Michael, can you guess the budget for Leaving Las Vegas?
3 million.
Very good guess, 4 million.
Okay.
So, yeah, around there. So, well done. The box office, Michael, how much did it make?
10 million.
No, quite a bit higher.
Oh, really? 20 million.
50.
50, that's quite a lot. Yeah.
49.8. Yes, you consider, we'll go into the filming and how, obviously the formula budget is quite low, but yeah, the filming, it was really done on the fly. And for this movie to rake in 50 million is quite crazy, really. Again, you have to say, well, it was one of the reasons why it was so successful was because this film had a lot of Oscar buzz. And I guess that's why we're doing this movie, why we picked this particular movie, is because, Michael, who won? Which actor won an Academy Award for their performance in this movie?
The best actor, Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage. Now, obviously, Nicolas Cage has been in some pretty bad movies. He's given some pretty weird performances, wouldn't you say?
Yes, to put it mildly.
Yes, and he's a bit of a meme. But what's incredible about that is he has produced a fantastic performance which won him the Academy Award for Best Actor. And that was why this movie will always be, I guess, famous, be well-known, be worthy of review, because it's Nicolas Cage, a guy who, like I said, he has had his fair share of criticism over the years for some of the movies he's been in and some of the performances he's produced in those movies. He actually won an Academy Award for this movie. Quite incredible, really. So yeah, Michael, did you like Leaving in Las Vegas?
Well, 2 weeks ago, I think, we did, what was it called? The old A Requiem for a Dream. And
yes.
You were saying how your attitude was that I said that I didn't really enjoy it, and you were quite surprised at the reason why I didn't enjoy it. And you said, well, the reason that you didn't enjoy it was because you found it too harrowing, and that meant you couldn't
you make
really
me
enjoy
sound
it.
like a bitch.
Okay, fine. You found it triggered you, and therefore you couldn't enjoy it. No, you didn't. The content was too miserable. It was just an overall too miserable experience, and as such, you found that it wasn't really a good watch. Would you agree with that wording? Why don't you word it, Luke? How would you describe it? Come on.
I'd say the reason why I didn't like it was because the themes were quite simplistic, and it wasn't. And you could say coupled with that, it wasn't like a nice movie to watch. You said it was like goofy, which obviously I didn't get. But yeah, I mean, I didn't like it because I guess it was just like, okay, this is quite depressing. That's the tone. But is that it? Is it just meant to be depressing? And yeah, obviously there were some comical moments thrown in as we discussed, which you found really funny. But yeah, how does that relate to Leaving Las Vegas?
Well, basically, I was going to say that I just found this film to be rather miserable and somewhat. It's just like it's a real ceaseless slog of sadness. And I don't know if I wouldn't say I didn't like it, but I would say that I don't think I got that much out of it apart from just misery. And I think it seems like everything about this film is just miserable.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess you said, I can't remember if we recorded ourselves saying this, but a few weeks ago you did say, wow, we've really got a run of miserable movies, haven't we?
Yes, yeah, I do remember saying that. And yeah, I think I probably would have, maybe I didn't actually, because I like to say what films we're doing and then I take a little while to process the films we're doing, and then I give my opinion. Yes,
and obviously Requiem for a Dream can be compared to this movie just because of the misery. So did you say you liked it or not? What is your verdict?
I guess I can't say I liked it. I wouldn't say I disliked it, so I'd say but I would say I didn't get that much out of it apart from just badness. I mean, there are aspects of it I liked. So overall, I guess there's some aspects I liked, but I wouldn't say I liked it.
Are you glad I made you watch this?
Well, no, not really. I mean, it's not, the thing's, this film, there's nothing even to make fun of.
There isn't that goofy element that you saw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, there's no woman getting attacked by a fridge. I think it would have been, and it's so annoying because it's Nicolas Cage. Just imagine Nicolas Cage in Requiem for a Dream. Wouldn't that have just been incredible? Just like,
Jesus Christ.
It's my fridge. The best thing ever.
Oh, God. An all-time what if, Nicolas Cage and Requiem for a Dream. Yeah, I'd say I don't think I liked it. Kind of the same thing as you, because it was quite a miserable movie. But I can appreciate it in a way that I can't with Requiem for a Dream. So maybe that's the difference right there. But anyway, Michael, let's get into the nitpicks for Leaving Las Vegas. How many do you have?
I've got 2, I think. Yes, 2.
I've also got 2.
Okay.
So what do we do?
Well, I'll flip my bottle cap. Are you going to guess it's going to be top up or top down?
We'll go with top up in honour of Nicolas Cage.
Top up? You're right. Okay, you get to go first.
Oh,
you can choose, actually.
You know what? You go first, Michael.
Yeah, I feel like you do it every single time you win the toss. You let me go first. So I've got a bit of a Cinema Cindy one, but I just thought this was funny, and I was thinking about something I could think of. So 15 minutes until the titles. I found that, funny. It's like, Genuinely, it's like I checked the second time I watched it, I checked the runtime. Yeah, it's 15 minutes in that you get the titles Leaving Las Vegas, and it starts doing the credits and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah. And then, okay, so this one, believe it or not, maybe you thought that last one was a bit rubbish. This one, I think you could easily say it's not a great one, but it's more of my personal opinion on how people would act. So I don't believe the taxi driver would act like that much of a knob in that situation. It just seems like, I feel like taxi drivers, in my experience, usually are quite nice,
really?
Quite jovial people. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe, see, I feel like
These are taxi drivers in Vegas, though.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the issue I'm having. See, it could be a thing where, like, in that, because obviously all the taxi drivers I have are just in my lovely areas where I live, and they're always very friendly, and I always like having a little chat with the taxi drivers. But maybe if we had the Las Vegas taxi drivers, they'd just be going, "Hey, did you get fucked in the ass?" And I'd be going, "No, thank you for asking, I guess, but no."
No, that did not happen. I think I can't imagine Elizabeth Shue giving a good Uber rating.
Yes.
To that taxi driver. But yeah, so those are your two nitpicks then. And one of them isn't really a nitpick, I'd contend with. But anyway, I also have two. And my first one is, quite simply, Michael, the sex scenes in this movie are so tame. I mean, here's the thing. We watched Showgirls last week, and just the comparison between the two is quite funny. Like how, because these movies were released in the same year, obviously in 1995, and it's just like, I mean, you got to up your game Leaving Las Vegas, because you saw what could be done last week in Showgirls, and it's just not good enough. Would you agree with that?
No, yeah, basically, I think you're absolutely right. The sex scenes, there's no flopping about. And that's what all men want. Yeah, basically. I mean, and it's kind of good, actually, because believe it or not, the first time I watched this film, I actually watched it on a bus. I've mentioned this before, how I used to like to catch up on some of my films when I was taking the bus to university. And and a lot of the time, you might think, oh, doesn't that distract you? No, actually, it means because I'm on the bus, I've got nothing else to do. It means I'm paying more attention, which I think was good in this film, because I just had to, it inclined me more to just sit with it and just experience it all, rather than what I might otherwise have wanted to do. I'd be like, oh, I'm getting a bit sad, I'm going to have a little break.
Did you know about how sad it was before you watched it?
No, not really. I mean, I knew it wasn't. See, I knew it wasn't a goofy Nicolas Cage film, and I do know those non-goofy Nicolas Cage films do exist. But yeah, I didn't know it was. I wasn't expecting it to just be about a guy trying to kill himself from alcohol. So yeah, overall though, I was happy that there wasn't too much sex, because it means that I didn't have to spend too much time being self-conscious about people looking through the gaps of the seats on the bus and thinking that I'm watching pornography.
Okay. Yeah, really like awful quality pornography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like from back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's my first nitpick. Second nitpick is, so Sarah, obviously she's a prostitute. She has a Latvian pimp who gets murdered by some Polish gangsters, which doesn't really go anywhere. I thought that maybe would...
Yeah, that kind of seemed a bit random.
Yeah, I mean, like that would reoccur later on in the movie. And I guess it's one of those things where it was probably had a bigger role in the book, I'd imagine, and it was just cut out for the movie release. But anyway, so he gets murdered by the Polish gangsters, and Elizabeth Shue comes to visit him. And she says, "Look, I did really well. I got a lot of money tonight." And then he tells her to leave, so she doesn't get killed. But he just leaves the money. He doesn't tell Sarah to take the money. Like, he knows he's going to die.
Yeah, what an arsehole.
I know. It's like, well, you've just given it to the Polish gangsters. Like, it's not even like you're an arsehole. You're just stupid.
Yeah. I'm with you on this, Luke.
The people who are going to kill you are now like $700 up. So they've actually got a prize for killing you. So just tell her to take the money. And yeah, it helps her out, and apparently you care about her on some level. So yeah, go and do that. But he didn't. So I just found that quite bizarre. But yeah, so those are my two nitpicks. And so yeah, let's get into the plot of Leaving Las Vegas. So I'll just read it out from Wikipedia. Nicolas Cage stars as a suicidal alcoholic in Los Angeles who, divorced and recently fired, has decided to move to Las Vegas and drink himself to death. What a lovely premise that is. He loads He loads a supply of liquor and beer into his BMW and gets drunk as he drives from Los Angeles to Nevada. Once there, he develops a romantic relationship with a pretty but hardened prostitute, played by Elizabeth Shue. And as mentioned, O'Brien, the person who wrote this, died by suicide after signing away the film rights to the novel. Interestingly, well, we mentioned it, Nicolas Cage won the Academy Award for Best Actor, and Elizabeth Shue was also nominated for Best Actress for the Golden Globes, but not the Academy Awards. The film also received nominations for Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Director, but it didn't win any of those two. Okay, Michael, so let's talk about the premise, I guess, because I mentioned it before, it's quite a depressing premise, but again, I think it's very interesting. It's like one of those premises where, like, you hear about it, like, Nicolas Cage goes to Las Vegas to drink himself to death. You know, he takes all his money, and he's just gonna kill himself. It's a very interesting thing, isn't it? What would you say?
Yeah, basically, I mean, see, this is what I would kind of call an art film, insofar as it feels like the film is very much about one particular thing, and it feels like the film's kind of exploring that thing. Like, that's how, if you were to kind of ask me to say what this film's about, I'd say, well, the film is exploring this character who decides to just kill himself via, well, literally, drink himself to death. And I would say almost everything else in the film is built off of that, and it's kind of all in service to that. And so one thing I wouldn't say, for example, is that this film is about the relationship between the two main characters.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
There, I have to say.
You think I'm an idiot? That's what you're saying.
Well, no, I don't think you're an idiot. I mean, obviously, one part of it is, the effects of alcoholism, are brought to life, and how somebody can, have a family and a job and just self-destructs, I guess. And, you can compare that, I guess, to, as we mentioned before, Requiem for a Dream. Although I think this does it in a more tasteful way, shall we say, than Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah.
There is no scene where somebody shouts ass to ass at Elizabeth Shue or Nick Cage. But yeah, I guess, well, we'll talk about, I guess, what this movie is about after. And I say I disagree about, because I think the relationship is the thing that it is about the most. But yeah, I guess just talking about the plot details. Do you have anything to say on the actual what happens in the movie? Because I got a few quibbles, I guess, but you go first.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I guess the only thing which you've kind of mentioned already is a lot of the film feels kind of disjointed, and it's kind of there's very little in terms of the events that happen that feel like they come back on each other. Also, come back on, I don't know what the word I'm looking for there is, but like, when I just think about the things that happen in this film, I remember because when I was watching it the second time, I kept thinking, oh yeah, this happens in this film, and oh yeah, that happens in this film. And obviously you have, for example, you've mentioned the gangster scene with these pimps, and you, again, in my head, I compare it to a film like Taxi Driver, which is obviously very much about the relationship between the love interest and the pimps, and that's the thing which is built up throughout the entire film until it comes to a climactic head. I think I feel like that's the right term. But then obviously there's loads of other things, but the one thing which particularly stands out is the rape scene where she gets attacked by some people she is prostituting for. I feel that's not the right term. Prostituting to, and obviously that just kind of is very self-contained. I felt that's the issue. A lot of the things that happen in this film feel very self-contained in a way where nothing really builds up on each other. There's no plot threads that really weave into each other or anything like that. Is that maybe what you're thinking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't specifically that, but you are right. The film, well, I guess that it goes back to my point about the film just being about those two and the relationship. It's just things that just happen to them. And the pattern is that the things that happen to them consistently are bad, and obviously Nick Cage brings it on himself, and Elizabeth Shue, she kind of is just subjected to this harsh world that she lives in Vegas. But here's my issue, I guess, with the movie, and I was surprised you haven't brought this up, because I thought you would, and I'm just wondering how, of course, because it's a romantic drama film. And it's about the relationship. That's what I think anyway. The relationship between Nick Cage and Elizabeth Shue. I was just thinking throughout this movie, just in the back of my mind, I couldn't get it out of my head, and it stopped me from going like fully into this. How realistic is this movie? I mean, I just have to think, like, surely there are some prostitutes who encounter men who literally just want to talk to them.
That's true. Yeah, that's definitely
why that's the case.
That's 100. Yeah, I think you are right. I mean, that's the thing. This whole film, I guess, because that's the thing, and that's kind of another reason why I would call this film an art film, is that a lot of the time in art films, it kind of realism can fall to the wayside. I feel like that is, you're definitely right. And while I was thinking about maybe tying that more into the acting thing, but that's just because I think you can put it anywhere. Which I think there's a lot of stuff about this film which doesn't feel very real to me. And definitely, the relationship thing, like you say, the fact that I'm quite sure that you would have lots of men who want to speak with prostitutes would have some emotional issues. Some of them might not, but a lot of them I think would. And they possibly, I feel it's almost like a cliche at this point, just like a guy speaking to a prostitute and it's just like, I just need to talk because I've got so many problems.
They just want someone to listen, like a cheap therapist, I guess. I feel
like a lot of men probably do that after banging, like they break down crying after they ejaculate, just like I do. I agree with you that it feels unrealistic that she's like, oh wow, he's so deep and complex because he wanted to speak to me. And overall, I find it, I think that it's never really clear what the characters are going, or what's going through the characters' minds that makes them want to really be in a situation. And you can kind of infer it. You can be like, well, Elizabeth Shue kind of doesn't really know what she's doing with her life, so maybe she identifies with Nicolas Cage. The other thing, actually, I was going to say is that it's quite difficult to get invested in it because this is a film about a guy who just decides he's going to drink himself to death. And kind of, for me, it almost felt like the entire time I'm watching the film, I never really doubted that he was going to drink himself to death, which meant I was never really invested in the idea that there was a chance of him getting out of it. I remember, what have you got to say about that? Because that was kind of my thoughts, that basically it's because it just feels like him, well, his demise is an inevitable consequence throughout the entire film, and there's never really any sense at all that, like, there's a hope of him getting something, which means it's quite difficult to get invested emotionally in the idea of, like, he could get out of this. The only thing you can kind of do is just passively watch him, and obviously you can feel sad, and you can feel like an emotional response to the hopelessness of it, but you can't really have that emotional sense of like, oh, come on, Nicolas Cage, I really want you to sort it out, because, I don't know, I never really thought he was. I don't know.
Maybe, you're right, maybe it would have been a better movie if he had this moment of, well, okay, maybe he's not going to drink himself to death, but consistently, that's what he, does, obviously, and he always says, just let me drink, don't tell me not to drink. And...
yeah, which also... Sorry, I'll let you say, because...
Okay, I was just going to say, there isn't a moment where you think it is going to turn around, that Elizabeth Shue is going to save him, and they're going to be happy together, and he'll be fine, and they'll have each other. But yeah, obviously then the plot, the direction it goes, I think the pivotal scene is when they're at the table having some rice, I think, and she says, you need to go and see a doctor, and he just says no, and then he goes out gambling, and he brings back a prostitute, obviously, and yeah, that's it. That's like, okay, then, yeah, she's not gonna save him, and that's it. And again, it probably would have been better if he was maybe having some second thoughts about killing himself, but he doesn't. So yeah, it is kind of, you are right, it kind of just makes you think, okay, we're just watching some guy die. It's hard to get invested, I guess, in his story as much if you just know it's going to end one way, and there is no moment where you think it isn't going to end the way it ends. So yeah, I do agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me a bit of Manchester by the Sea, and that Manchester by the Sea, I remember, which I do think is a very good film, but my big criticism of it was always that I was like, it kind of feels like there was never, there weren't the ups and downs I think would have complemented his narrative. If there was like a moment where you really felt things were going right for him, and then kind of then you had the big hit of like, no, he's so depressed it's never gonna fix. But this film's like that, but even worse in terms of obviously his film's doing what it's doing, and I say all respect to it, but there's lots of other films which I think do a similar thing, but they have like that moment where, like, say, you think things are going well, and therefore you're like, oh yeah, and then when it doesn't go well, that's when it hits you, and I feel like that's something which lots of films can do with.
there's no tension, I guess. That is the key. And yeah, before you watch the movie, you read the premise and you think, like Nick Cage meets this hardened prostitute called Sarah, and you think, well, one of the directions this could go is he meets Sarah and he is reinvigorated. He has, his zest for life back. But there is, again, never a point in the movie where you think, where you think that he could end up like saved. There is no point where it makes you think, oh, yeah, it is going down this path. Because obviously, before I watched it, I didn't know. For the first time, I didn't know what direction it was going to go in. I just knew, the premise, and you watch the movie, and it's just throughout. It's like, okay, this is going to happen. He's going to die. It's going to be very depressing. I don't see any way this is going to go any other way. And obviously, also Elizabeth Shue gets raped, as you have said, the second time in a row. We have seen a gang rape scene in Las Vegas. Doing this Select and Reflect probably won't happen.
Yeah.
Probably won't happen in Caddyshack, I have to say.
Yes.
We can probably rule it out happening for a third time, but yeah.
But, 80s comedies did have some dodgy jokes in them when it came to sexual consent.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, I just do want to go back to the realistic thing. For a bit.
I was thinking about going back to that too, actually, funnily enough.
Oh, that's
great
good.
minds.
Yeah, so, because, we talked before about how, is it that realistic? Because obviously prostitutes surely encounter men who just want to talk. I actually think in the back of my mind that I remember seeing a Reddit discussion, maybe with the prostitutes, or I can't remember what the context was, but basically somebody who was a prostitute saying, a lot of men just wanted to talk, they just didn't want to
I could.
sex.
I feel like a lot of the time there's AMAs from various sorts of sex workers, and a lot of the time they get upvoted because people find it hot, probably.
Well, yeah, I guess it's maybe that's one of the reasons, but yeah, and that's the thing. And you said before, well, it is an art film, so that means that you can do this, but I know it's pretty. If it's set in the real world, it's a pretty flimsy reason, and I do kind of feel like obviously this is why I expected you to talk about this, because obviously this book. Which of course was adapted into this movie. The book was originally written by a man, and I guess so was the movie. And it does seem like this is kind of like a male fantasy from like a middle-aged guy, Nicolas Cage, who's a drunk, who's obviously he's not that good looking at all. He's just an average run-of-the-mill guy. It seems nothing that special about him. I mean, he had a good job, but obviously he doesn't have that now. And he's being like rescued by this beautiful woman who obviously is a prostitute. That's what makes the fantasy quote unquote realistic. I mean, he even says at some point like she's an angel. But again, I don't know if it's that realistic that she would fall in love with him. Again, like, is that she says like, at the end of the movie I did love him, and I'm just like, why? I can obviously understand why Nick Cage would, because again she's attractive and she's kind. And, you could, I can imagine him thinking, oh, this girl, she's an angel. But why would Elizabeth Shue in this movie for Nick Cage? I just don't see the parallel there. What do you think about that?
No, basically, I think you're right about it being a male fantasy as well, that it does feel like, it's hard to imagine what on earth is going on in their head. I think I feel like this film would be more interesting. It is weird because they do kind of transition by the end to it feeling more like it's from Elizabeth Shue's perspective, which is weird because I feel like it would have worked much better if it almost started off being from Elizabeth Shue's perspective and either stayed being from Elizabeth Shue's perspective or was switched to Nicolas Cage's perspective if it liked. But I think it makes sense for it to start from Elizabeth Shue's perspective because Nicolas Cage is quite simple. There's no real complexity to it. He's, every single time, every now and then I'd find myself wanting to think about some complexity to it, thinking like, why does he want to do this? And I thought, well, I guess he's just, he's just that drunk. I remember at one point I thought to myself, hold on a minute, he's got this beautiful woman who's attracted to him, blah, 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 blah. Why does he still want to kill himself? I'm like, well, I guess it's just because, he's drunk. Which is fine, but then obviously it means there's no complexity. Like, logically, it's not like his life is even that bad. The only thing you can point to say why he does anything he does is because he's drunk, which is fine. But then if it's a bit weird to then do that and then have him be the main character and have the woman who falls in love with this hopeless drunkard be a secondary character until towards the end she starts to transition to being the major character, when it would have been far more interesting to, seeing as Elizabeth Shue's motivation is beyond just she's drunk, and no matter, even if you say like, oh, it's because, as a prostitute, maybe she is also on the outskirts involved and that's why she identifies with him. Well, even then, that's more sophisticated than just she's drunk. And therefore, I feel like they really could have done themselves a solid by having the story be told from Elizabeth Shue's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I was looking throughout the movie, or trying to find what motivation that she has, trying to get any clues. And she says, well, quite explicitly at one point, her motivation, she says she's using him. And so I guess she's lonely. She says, she's got nothing to come home to. She just wants like somebody who's a friend, I guess, and somebody, who can understand her and is okay with the work that she does. But I don't, and that is, one, it's a very good reason, I guess, that you finally found somebody who, can just hang out with you and not judge you. But if there's one thing we have learned, Michael, from Pretty Woman. Remember that movie, Pretty Woman?
Yeah, we love it. Yeah, I have been thinking about Pretty Woman for a while.
I mean, yeah, obviously that movie has a couple of prostitutes in it. One of them played by Julie Roberts. There is solidarity between prostitutes.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that something that we've learned? And I feel like that is the case.
I would imagine it's true, yeah.
In real life, I mean, I don't have that much knowledge, but I can imagine that would be the case. Like, surely she would know some of the prostitutes. Like, surely... I mean, look, does that Latvian guy only have one prostitute? Like, he's a pimp. Is Elizabeth Shue the only one?
He's a monogamous pimp. He's a one-ho pimp.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would imagine he would have more girls if he's like a full-on like pimp. But yeah, anyway, like, surely she wouldn't be lonely if she has other prostitutes that spend time with her. I just find it hard to believe that. Of course, Vegas is a big city, so it's it's like not like she'd be the only one in that town who does that job. So yeah, that's something that I'm like, really? I mean, this movie does. I guess obviously it does a lot of things better than Pretty Woman, and one of them is that you really do get a sense of how awful it is to be a prostitute in this movie compared to Pretty Woman. Again, I don't want to rag on Pretty Woman, but that's just the movie that springs to mind as we've watched it relatively recently. But yeah, so that's something that this movie does do good in relation to how it looks at prostitution. But again, I just have to feel like she wouldn't be lonely. She could live with another one of the people who do the same job as her. Surely that would be the case. So yeah, I don't really buy that she'd be lonely. Like, I guess that's how you could look at this movie, or what this movie is about, really, to jump onto that. Because you could say, well, it's two people having company in a lonely world, two people who have messed up lives that, tolerate each other's lives when no one else will. Elizabeth Shue tolerates Nicolas Cage being a drunk, and Nicolas Cage tolerates Elizabeth Shue being a prostitute. And yeah, that's great and all, but like I have to think, like, surely Elizabeth Shue wouldn't be lonely in this world. Nick Cage, obviously, yeah, that makes sense, but not Elizabeth Shue. Again, I have to think that she'd have some friends who did the same job as her. Don't you think that would be the case? Yeah,
basically, that would make sense too. Actually, it doesn't. I would assume the isolation she seems to experience. I mean, it also contradicts Showgirls. Obviously, Showgirls isn't about prostitutes, but it's about people in kind of a form of sex work. And that establishes, I mean, obviously a conflicted solidarity. Obviously, it's a conflicted solidarity of sorts, but it's still there. And yeah, overall, I think that, yeah, you're right. It does feel a bit weird how isolated Elizabeth Shue is made to appear as a prostitute, which would seem to contradict. And obviously, who knows, maybe we're completely wrong and someone's going to say, actually, prostitutes, there's lots of prostitutes, they're like cats. They hang out on their own. And we'll go, okay, fine, well done. But I think it's not true. I think that, yeah, they do hang out together. They roll in packs.
Yeah. I mean, it is such a tough and dangerous job that, you'd think that, okay, you have to, the women together would stick together. I mean, that's the thing that I've seen in, like, every media that features prostitutes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And, like, some media can be wrong sometimes, but not all media can be wrong all the time.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Like, from just movies, like I mentioned, Pretty Woman, to, like, TV shows, which, like, feature police, and like they always talk to prostitutes, and the prostitutes are always in groups, and they always, tell the police officer about this girl who I knew, or I was friends with this girl, and then this happened to her, etc. Like, yeah, it must be. Yeah, I don't think it's the case that you would have someone like Elizabeth Shue who'd be lonely in a city like Vegas. But anyway, I guess, well, let's talk about the actual what this movie is about, because you just think it's about. Well, you said at the start it's about Nicolas Cage and his descent, I guess, and how some people fuck up their lives. But and here's the thing: why this movie got a lot of rave reviews at the time, and I can understand the point, even though I don't really see it again being that realistic, giving one of the people who's involved in this relationship their character and how it would be in real life. But the point is, it's a deep romantic movie about two people who have lost their way, who aren't happy, who for a few weeks find some love in this cruel, harsh world. And I guess that's why. Yeah, what do you think of that? Do you think that's a fair assessment? First off,
yeah. I mean, it seems like basically that's kind of a similar point to mine, except just adding in that there's two people. Now I can see how it's slightly different, but you know what this
they
sounds a
each
bit
find
like
each other. That's why it's so special, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a bit like Call Me by Your Name, and it's about a love that can't last. Can't argue that.
Yeah, exactly.
About, I was actually enjoying the love while it's there.
I was actually thinking of Call Me by Your Name because there isn't like some plot details, but it is like that. It's like this love which can't last. But I guess the difference is that this is set in a world which is very different to wherever. Where's Call Me by Your Name set again?
It's set in northern Italy, I think.
Yeah, a very beautiful.
Well, either way, rural Italy.
Yeah, a very beautiful part of the world, and it's a lovely movie. And this obviously is set in a city very different from that place, and I guess it's more than that's why. I guess that's why it's more than just love that can't last. It's this love somehow flourishes in a world again which is very harsh and cruel. So surely that makes it even more special. I guess is again the word I'd use. But yeah, do you think that's something that is I don't know. I guess fair. What do you think?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, it's showing how love can shine like bright in the darkest places. And yeah, I would say that's overall true. And it definitely. But I suppose the issue is, I mean, the problem is that while you can say that, obviously at the centre of it is the fact that there's something quite unbelievable and a bit difficult to cryptic about this love anyway, and this relationship anyway, because obviously it's not clear what she's into it for and things like that.
Yeah.
So while it's definitely true that I think the fact that there is love at all is an interesting kind of way of looking at the relationship, or looking at kind of that experience of descending into, ill repute and drinking yourself silly and all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, the fact that it's kind of hard to be like, well, what's she in this for, does somewhat take away from that, unfortunately. But yeah, I can see the overall point you're making.
Yeah, you can tell what it's going for, and that's the thing. That is the point overall. You can tell what it's going for, what it's trying to say. What the point is, but again, just how it gets there. It's built on, as we have outlined, some pretty shaky foundations. And yeah, I think that's why this movie got such rave reviews, because it was a romantic drama film, but it was just a prostitute and a drunk coming together in Las Vegas. But as we've outlined, like I said, it's very hard to see how you would get to that. But again, I think you could argue why this movie is heralded, and why Nick Cage, part of the reason why he won that Best Actor, which we'll get onto next, is because of how he talks about it, I guess, in the when he discussing how he came to choose that he was going to do this movie. He was like, well, nobody's going to make this, this movie is so depressing and everything, and that's why it's different to other romantic drama movies, and so yeah, do you think I've convinced you that it's more than just about Nicolas Cage? That the point is how weird this romance is, and how
yeah, but I feel like the problem is it's there, but I feel like it's in terms of the actual effects of it, I feel like it's not the Nicolas Cage aspect is the overriding thing. So obviously there are other things you can talk about, and I think you can make an argument this film is also about, for example, prostitution, and that's going to be a thing which people are going to kind of take some message away with. Obviously the scenes that show the potential dangers of prostitution. But overall, I would say, yes, you've kind of convinced me. But overall, I was never really saying, like, it's 100% just about that, as in just about that. But I was just saying, like, for me, the main thing I took away from it was just, oh, it's about this guy killing himself. And yeah, I suppose I can see how maybe you've pushed it from maybe like, oh, it's 90% about Nicolas Cage and that stuff to maybe 75%. So, you know, not as completely, but overall, I'd still say Nicolas Cage is the big main thing there.
Yeah, I mean, I would. It starts off like that, but then you see, like you say, well, like you said before, Elizabeth Shue gets more into it, and by the end of the movie, like, she is the main character, you know, and she's talking to a therapist, and you do have throughout the movie like little snippets of her talking to a therapist, which does kind of convey, you know, I guess, it backs up my argument basically, Michael, and I'm right, and you are undoubtedly wrong. So,
You always say that, Luke.
Is there any more to say than that, basically?
Well, yeah, it does seem like that's all you ever have to say, Luke.
Yeah.
You're always just attacking me.
Yeah, okay.
And my valid opinions.
But no, I guess to sum up on the plot, and well, I'll say this is the point of it, is like, yes, it is nice. It is like, oh, how beautiful that love can develop between these two characters who are just estranged, who are damaged. But how it gets there, I'm like, not sure that would actually happen. Not sure. And again, it does feel like, this could only be written by a guy who was like, oh, I wish this would happen to me because I'm so depressed. And, you know, it wouldn't be great if I could have somebody to come along who was like a prostitute, who could, you know, who was desperate as well. So therefore they'd help me and we could have some good times. That does feel like where it comes from. And, if you ignore that, then, you could, again, like, it's just some of the stuff at the time that was being said by reviewers. They were like, oh, this is just the most beautiful, you know, romantic story ever, you know. And it's still to this day, actually. I read a review which came out last year for some reason, but it was like talk about 24 years since Leaving Las Vegas come out, and how, you know, it's still one of the best romances put on screen. And I can understand that, but again, it's like, well, again, I'm not really sure Elizabeth Shue would be that committed to it. That's where I stand on it. Anything else to say?
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing which maybe we should talk about, I don't know when else we can talk about this, is the way that Nicolas Cage as a drunk is handled, just because I think I think it is handled, and I think the significant thing is you can tell loads of stories about people who are alcoholics. I mean, you can do it with, and loads of stories about, I guess you could say, any kind of addiction. And obviously there's plenty of films about like rock stars and stuff where it comes into play, but even just a film about somebody being an alcoholic. And I feel like it's very kind of, I want to say over the top. And obviously I realize that you can say, well, you know, it's anything can be over the top. But for example, I mean, my great granddad was a full-on alkie. And the term that my granddad used to describe him was, he said he was pickled, meaning that, which he basically meant to mean that he was just drunk all the time. He was never ever sober, and he just reached that point. But the thing about him, and I feel like the kind of cool thing about, I say cool thing, no, the thing that's kind of to me interesting is that obviously he was kind of reasonably friendly with the people in his community. He obviously lived in a house. He had a wife and kids and blah, 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 blah. It's just that he was drinking all the time. And I feel like to me, that's kind of an interesting thing. The fact that somebody can be an alcoholic, be like constantly drunk, but be able to maintain healthy relationships with people and be able to maintain a job to some degree and, you know, like have a house and a family, things like that. And to me, that's interesting, the kind of contrast between the fact that you can have this serious alcoholism and also be in some ways kind of functional in your day-to-day life. And I feel like the big problem I have with this film from me being interested in it standpoint, or, you know, one aspect of me being interested in it, is that I feel like this film essentially takes away that interesting dichotomy of being like, well, you know what, if you're an alcoholic, it just means you're always, you know, you basically can't even function. You're just, you know, your only hope is having some weirdo crazy prostitute who loves you for no reason, and you're just life's gonna spin out of control. And I feel like it's interesting, and it's like interesting to see that happen, somebody whose life is just going to shit. But then I feel like the objectively more interesting thing is seeing somebody who has a big vice, but then they've got other positives. And that's kind of an issue where I would say this film, it's not nuanced enough to be considered great, in my opinion.
Okay, well, I guess this lends on to Nicolas Cage's acting. Because
yes, I was just thinking that.
This is the discussion we're going to have. Does Nicolas Cage deserve to get this best actor that he won? Because you said it's not very nuanced, and I agree. And that is, I guess, the Nick Cage mantra. Not very nuanced.
Yes.
Yeah, but I have to say, look, I know, it is over the top, I guess. You could say, but like, maybe somebody is like this. Like, I don't think this movie is saying all alcoholics are like this. It's just like this particular one is, and that's what makes it so depressing, and that he is like this, that he can't function. So it wouldn't really make sense in this movie if he could function.
Although I guess the only thing there is that I think it means that this film is no longer a commentary on alcoholism, which I think, again, anybody, obviously...
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily is.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, the film can be what it wants to be.
Yeah.
But I would say, that there's... And to be honest, like, sometimes I'll respect, like, for example, a lot of the time, if a film's just like a fun action-adventure film, it's unlikely to get more than a 7 from me, even if it's a very well-made fun action-adventure film, because I feel like fun action-adventure films, ultimately, they don't bring the big oomph. And even though, but I would 100% respect the fun action-adventure film for being a fun action-adventure film, even though I'm probably unlikely to give it more than 7. Sometimes I will, but usually that's kind of what I would consider a good fun action-adventure film. And I think in a similar way, I can respect that this film is being what it is, but I think it has limitations in terms of how one can feel about it emotionally. And obviously the thing is there is an emotional thing happening with the aspect of like, oh, he's just sad all the time. But you do lose an aspect of hoping that he'll get out of it, and kind of the emotional highs and lows, because it's basically just one big emotional low, which I think is less interesting emotionally, because it's like exciting when you can watch a film, you can feel like a film makes you feel really sad, really happy, really blah, 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 blah. This film's just like sad all the time. But overall, yeah, I would agree with you that I can see what this film is trying to do, and I think that's fine. But the film succeeded in doing what it was trying to do, and yet because what the film is trying to do is something I don't consider as interesting as other things that could be done with this premise. And obviously, I mean, very different thing, but you talk about Wolf of Wall Street in terms of just looking at the excesses of various forms of addiction and things like that. This film is completely different, and I don't think it does it in an as interesting of a way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't want to really discuss alcoholism. It just, that is, he can't be on drugs, because obviously you can't get drugs that easily, so it has to be alcoholism. And yeah, I guess, well, it's not a very nuanced performance, as we said, but, it is what it is. Let's talk about Nick Cage now, because I do think that...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, obviously, you can argue with, well, he's not written this way and the plot doesn't go in this direction, so you can't emotionally connect with his character and, get invested in his downfall as much as you otherwise would, but his actual acting, I really enjoyed it, I have to say. I can understand why he got that Academy Award. I love it when the first time he says... he goes up to Elizabeth Shue and he goes, "I wonder if you'll fuck me for $250. Just, he's got a perfect blend of just a bit of madness and just a bit of humor about him. And also that scene where he's at the bar and the guy, when the guy headbutts him in the nose. Remember that?
Yeah.
And he just he says to the guy, "We have decided to spend a few hours together," talking about his girlfriend and him. I just like that. I just think that's he plays it so well. Like, he's not just always depressed. There is that little bit of humor in him, which I think is great. Again, it is a perfect role for him. And again, you consider other alcoholic performances. I think he does that blend quite well. Of not always, just depressed. Sometimes a bit happy. Sometimes, and that's the thing. It's a fake happiness, obviously. Like it's not really there, and that makes, I guess, things a bit sadder. But yeah, you read about his how he came to win this Academy Award, and like I said before, he said that nobody wanted to make this movie, and it was totally surprised when he got a nomination, and I read an article about it, and when he said when he won the award in his acceptance speech, he said, "It's not hip to say, but I really love acting," and I think that that kind of does sum up Nick Cage overall. He always gives it his all. He always goes for it fully. He doesn't leave anything on the table, and that's why he has been I guess maligned throughout his career. But also, it's how you get performance like this. So yeah, respect to Nick Cage, Michael. I'll say that.
Respect. I agree with that. I mean, I Actually, in advance watching this film, I thought, I've not seen many of Nicolas Cage's films that are considered to be good. So I watched a few of those just to kind of get an idea on it. And overall, yeah, I can say Nicolas Cage, he brings something. And I think a lot of films he does bring something quite different. I mean, obviously it is like he does have a certain energy that's quite consistent, but I feel like he'll often channel it in different directions. And I think it does, yeah, he is a skilled actor. And obviously, I mean, the funny thing is, it seems like a lot of the time people make fun of him. They make fun of him for just choosing very bad films. Because it seems like when he's in a good film, he does a perfectly good performance. Like he's never a bad part of a film. It's always just like, if the whole film is bad, then he'll also be bad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And yeah, the fact that he'll just like take any role, even though it's stupid. Like, for example, Face Off.
Face Off.
Yeah, just like such a stupid thing, but he'll take it and he'll play it, totally, straight, and he'll go as far as he can with it, because that's the type of guy he is. And so again, you respect it. You have to. I did like the moment, by the way. A very, very good moment was, you remember when he flips the table in anger?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, do you know, I read this. Do you know what he's screaming when he's doing that?
No.
Yeah, no. If you don't know, you don't know. He's screaming, I am his father. So that would be in reference to the fact that he's lost custody of his child. So yeah, that's nice. Again, I'd like it if you heard it in the movie and you didn't have to actually, go and see him say it like in an interview. But yeah, I thought, oh, that's really nice. That's a good moment. Just his anger, the reason why he's in this state, it's coming out right there. And yeah, shall we get on to Elizabeth Shue?
Yes, let's go on to Elizabeth Shue.
So Nick Cage won Best Actor at the Academy Awards. Do you think Elizabeth Shue deserved to win Best Actress, Michael? What do you think of her performance?
See, I don't know who else was in this film.
Well, she wasn't even nominated. Do you think she should have been nominated?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I think Beverly, what's her face from Showgirl should have been nominated first of all.
Elizabeth Berkley.
Yeah, Elizabeth Berkley. Sorry, yeah, I've forgotten her name. Yeah, is it Beverly? I knew it was Berkley. Well, I knew it was Berkley Beverly. Same thing. Anyway, so let's just say, seeing as I have heard of Leaving Las Vegas even before I'd seen it, I'd heard of it. So yeah, why not? I mean, I know that's not really relevant to the quality of the acting, but if I haven't heard of a film, the acting can't have been that good. It's fine. I mean, the thing is, I say it's fine. I felt what I was supposed to feel, which I guess is quite impressive given that it was kind of sad. And I think there was some subtlety to it, especially the weird scenes where she's, having the therapy sessions. So yeah, I think in those scenes actually you can kind of see a subtlety to her performance, minor intricacies, and overall, yeah, I think that was pretty good. But obviously for vast ways of the film, it's kind of everything else is so it's so much that sometimes it's a bit difficult to appreciate a good performance, which I do think is kind of an issue with some films like this. Like a lot of the time, the average performance can kind of stand out if the film is just and then the performance is just that. Like that's why I've always been like, everyone's always like, Leonardo DiCaprio should have won in The Wolf of Wall Street. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but to be honest, Leonardo DiCaprio in that film is just acting like a crazy person, and everyone in that film is acting like a crazy person, so it doesn't really stand out. Yeah. That's kind of how I feel about this.
Well, yeah, I think it doesn't stand out for different reasons. I think compare to Nicolas Cage, and obviously Nicolas Cage can do more things and he can be a bit crazy, and I think, like I said, he plays it really well. But yeah, she kind of has to be the the one controlling, or maybe not controlling, that's not a good word, but yeah, just the one who's the normal, rational person, and I guess that's hard to stand out. And she does have those scenes with a therapist, which like to show how good she is. But again, I think it's just decent. Like I think I've seen that kind of performance in a lot of romantic comedies. She does well, but it's not remarkable. And maybe because of the way she looks, and she does just give off this like girl next door kind of vibe. Like she's really sweet, which
she does seem a bit,
which doesn't really work. If she in the description of the movie it says she's a hardened prostitute, I'm like, she's not really, like, I don't get that vibe. So she's just like a standard, female in a romantic movie, really. And I guess she's a bit better than that, let's say, but yeah, nothing special. Okay, so shall we get into the actual filming now, Michael? So the limited budget dictated the production of Leaving Las Vegas. And Figgis, who wrote the movie, obviously, and directed, ended up filming in a Super 16mm and composing his own score. He remarked, "We didn't have any money, and we weren't pretending to be something we weren't. we couldn't shut down the strip to shoot. Nicolas Cage recounted that he found the use of 60mm liberating as an actor, stating in a 1995 interview with Roger Ebert, "As an actor, having a 16mm camera in my face was liberating because it's much smaller, so you don't feel as intimidated by it. It catches those little nuances, because as soon as that big camera's in your face, you tense up a little bit. Film acting is a learning experience about how to get over that, but I don't know that you ever really do." And that's something I have thought about. Obviously, I'm not an actor, but that's something I have thought about. It's like, you're trying to act natural when you've got like these big cameras just like to your right or to your left, and just staring right at you. How can you just be genuine?
Yeah.
So it helps, I guess, that it's 16mm. That it's smaller than usual. So yeah, what do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I've always thought that about the old Daniel Day-Lewis. I've always thought like, it's like they say that he stays in character the whole thing. I just think that must be so weird. And it's just like, okay, now we're going to start shooting. That's my my There Will Be Blood voice, and it's like, okay,
yeah.
And then it's just got to be like, I'm an oil, what's it called, oil baron, you see. And there's a camera there filming, and it's just like, how do you do it? And yeah,
it must be easier to do it. Like, it just must be easier if you're doing something that is quite outlandish, like someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, like a character which just isn't. He does
crazy
set in the past. Yeah, it's just be like that all the time, so you really get into it.
Yeah.
So also coupled with the fact that they couldn't shut down the strip to shoot, Figgis had problems because permits were not issued for some street scenes. This caused him to film some scenes on the Las Vegas Strip in one take to avoid the police, which Figgis said benefited production and the authenticity of the acting, remarking, "I've always hated the convention of shooting on a street and then having to stop the traffic. And then having to tell the actors, well, there's meant to be traffic here, so you're going to have to shout." And they're shouting, but it's quiet, and they feel really stupid, because it's unnatural. You put them up against a couple of trucks with all that happening around them, and their voices become great. So yeah, that is something that makes sense. Again, it just feels like with this movie, they were hamstrung a bit, but that leads to better results because it's just more authentic.
No, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the thing a lot of the time that happens in films shot in a club. You get people who are talking, and they're very obviously like the noises they're making is like they're talking at a volume where they wouldn't actually be talking based on the amount of background noise that should be happening. So I guess that actually having loads of background noise probably means that it's going to sound more like somebody's actually in a busy street. A lot of the time in films, I do feel like you get that issue of, because they have these professional microphones that just capture the sound of the voices, it doesn't really sound like you're there because in there you don't have special microphones that just capture the sound of people's voices. So yeah, basically I can imagine that would make sense. It's the old limitations cause benefits or whatever.
Yeah, no,
it's well done.
Absolutely. I think that's, again, we talk about what a great success this movie was. $50 million, relatively obscure little film, only a $4 million budget. Look at the difficulties they had filming, and they got a best actor out of it. So yeah, just a really good job all round. It's a good little success story. Anything else to say in the filming?
No, yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is, I suppose I'd say this film has a lot of music in it, and it's good. I feel like it does make the film feel a bit, I don't know, I feel like in some ways it makes the film feel a bit less real, because it does kind of feel like you're watching almost a spoof of a noir film, which is like, you get this weird jazzy music in the background while all this stuff is going on, and I think in some, I would have felt like the film was a bit more personal and intimate if you didn't have this weird, like, I don't know, porno music in the background. Well,
do you know what, actually? That's the thing.
But I did like the music objectively, I just didn't like what it did in the film.
Yeah, there's a lot of music. Do you know how many fucking songs there are in this movie?
17.
25.
Wow.
Yeah.
Some of the songs I liked, though. I actually, I like the song that's like, I'm gonna love you, rain or shine.
Yeah, come rain or shine. I think that's
a good one.
Yeah,
I like that song.
No, there are some nice songs in there, and yeah, they do contribute to the depressing atmosphere. Well, so Michael, shall we conclude? Got anything else to say?
No, yeah, let's conclude.
Okay, so do you want to go first?
Yes. Let me get it up. So yeah, we've spoken about this film, and basically, I think it's good. Yeah, I mean, what I pretty much said is it is good at what it wants to be. It's a film about a guy who wants to kill himself. It's a film about a depressing world, a bleak world, and it is, as Lucas pointed out, a film about two people having a relationship based in that. However, I think you could argue in at least the first and final point there that if it's about a man who has these issues, well, is that as interesting as a film about somebody whose alcoholism is a bit more nuanced? Well, no, it's not as interesting as a film about that. And, while this film certainly could have been a really interesting kind of look at the bleakness of life in a very I think this film could have gone full art film to really explore it, but it didn't do that. I feel like it would have done that, it probably would have worked out better, but instead it tried to have this dramatic element, which I don't think necessarily worked, with the fact that what we were dealing with wasn't too emotionally or narratively interesting, and obviously you had the relationship aspect, which was also interesting, or was also there, but and it did have the interesting element, like, oh look, it's the two people who are really kind of in shitty situations where they come together. But then there is a massive big question, which, you want these questions answered if you're going to get invested in a romance, which is, why do these two people like each other? What's the basis for their chemistry? Well, it doesn't really seem like they have any. So, unfortunately, there are a lot of things which I think hold this film back. And overall, I'd say good performance, interesting artistic stuff, but I don't know if I can put this film above a low 6. I'm going to put it below Mulan and above Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So, yeah, Leaving Las Vegas, a low 6, I think, is appropriate.
Okay. What do you think is the most depressing movie you've ever seen, Michael? And does this stack up to it?
That's actually a really good question. And honestly, I don't know. I think I can think of sad films I have seen, like, Blue Valentine's pretty sad and things like that, but I would say, see, the thing is, okay, I would say this film is objectively quite depressing, but I wasn't that invested in it, which meant that it wasn't that sad. Because, for example, if you're talking about just films we reviewed, I found Arrival to be much more gut-wrenching, and also, actually, for that matter, I found Manchester by the Sea to be much more depressing, because I got more invested in those films. So on the one hand, I would say objectively this film has more sad stuff in it, in that sense it's more depressing, but in terms of how much it affected me, I actually think, like, there's other films which dug their claws into me more, and therefore I felt more emotion from them. So yeah.
Well, yeah, you mentioned Manchester by the Sea, and that does compare. And I guess you're right. You can't get more invested in something like Manchester by the Sea. I mean, that movie is about grief and pain, and not about it's basically how some people just can't recover from it. And again, this movie, it's about, I guess, love coming out of that pain. That the awful lives that these two. Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue have, but yeah, again, is it that really, or is it that narratively interesting? Not really, I think, and it is what it is, and there isn't any tension regarding Nicolas Cage. Will things get better for him? It's hard to get, I guess, emotionally invested in the character, and these depressing movies, it can't just be about, oh, look how shit things are, yeah, there is a love story there, and that's what of course makes it a decent movie, but like then, well, it ends just as you kind of thought it was all the way along, and again, it's not really that interesting. And of course there's the realistic element, with these two people fall in love anyway, and as we've discussed, probably not, and so yeah, again, you have to respect it. It is what it is, but I guess I can't give it higher than a 7 out of 10. Which is a decent rating. By the way, Michael, do you know what Roger Ebert gave this movie? It's either going to be very high or very low, I would think. So I'm going to guess like he gave it a 4, because I know yes.
Yeah, so, and obviously he ranks out of 4. So
yes,
yeah, I guess maybe he really wants a prostitute to love him.
Do you know what movie? Well, yeah, I'll get onto that in a bit. But do you know what where Leaving Las Vegas ranked for him on his best movies of the 90s?
So obviously, again, I'm assuming it's going to be really high. I don't want it to be number 1. I think that would be ridiculous. But maybe like, I don't know, 4th?
It was 8th.
Okay, so that's that is surprising though. I mean, it's not necessarily surprising you gave it a perfect score, but yeah, for me, well, I can't agree.
Yeah, again, I just want to see what he put. Ebert wrote, "The characters are the drunk and the whore with the heart of gold. Cage and Shue make these cliches into unforgettable people." And again, I'd say
they're quite easy to forget.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I think definitely not Elizabeth Shue, but Nick Cage, yeah. Kind of. He gives a really good performance. But yeah, I guess the actual plot isn't that interesting. And again, it does come from the fact that I can't get past it. Like, would Elizabeth Shue really need Nicolas Cage? Probably not. And that's something I think these reviewers are kind of missing. He named it 8th on his best of the decade. So I guess it's an well, it's not really that interesting, but it is certainly a unique film. I think I've said that actually about the last 3 films we've done: Requiem for a Dream, Showgirls, and Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah, let's get an ununique film for once.
Yeah, so let's do that. What have we got next week, Michael?
Well, next week we've got I'd say a film that's not necessarily unique, actually. I'd say it's quite a standard 80s comedy film, but we're doing Caddyshack. So
yes, Caddyshack.
That's good.
Things should get a lot more fun.
Yes.
And than these movies we have been doing recently. And after that, well, who knows, because I've got to change things around. It's because obviously Tenet isn't coming out, and it is. So who knows whether we'll do Memento, Michael? Who knows?
Yeah, well, hopefully soon, Luke. I'm really excited for it.
Anyway, that is Leaving Las Vegas, a very depressing movie, and a movie which, again, I think has to be remembered because it's where Nick Cage got his best actor at the Academy Award. Really incredible considering some of the movies he has been in. But there you go. So, it was a perfect role for him, I guess. So join us next week for Caddyshack. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
And I've been Luke. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.